everybody, and welcome back to the Fire and Dice channel, where today we're going to do a book review on this right here, the Monstrous Lexicon. Now this book is actually written by Matt Rauscher and Kelsey Dionne, and it is published by the Pickled Dragon. A lot of you may be familiar with them. They have their website, thepickleddragon.com. They're also on Instagram at the Pickled Dragon. They're very active in the D&D community. They really contributed a lot. And I believe Matt was actually just at GaryCon the other weekend. So I've actually had this book for about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, so I've had a good chance to go through it and get a good understanding of what the book has to offer. And it's basically broken up into 2 sections, which we'll go over both of them today. The first one is going to be Playable Races, and the second one is going to be all the creatures that it has to offer. Now it's actually got 4 playable races, all that are basically new to Dungeons and Dragons. And why I say basically new, you'll understand in a second. A quick little bit of tidbit of information is the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica and Monstrous Lexicon were actually being written and published roughly along the same timeline. So the first playable race we're going to go over is the Minotaur. So the Ravnica obviously already has the Minotaur, so does Monstrous Lexicon. But the difference is the Monstrous Lexicon actually breaks it up into 2 sub-races. One is the Deep Minotaur, the second one is the Eperon Minotaur. And both of them are built differently from each other. And on top of that, they're both differently built from the Minotaur and Ravnica. So you really get 3 different versions of the Minotaur. You can really look at it, if you have both books, as 3 different sub-races of the Minotaur. You have the one in Ravnica, you have the 2 different ones in Monstrous Lexicon. All of them have different ability modifiers, and all 3 of them have slightly different racial traits. They all do have some type of attack with the horns, but they all bring their own flavor and their own features to the Minotaur. So don't think you're going to get the exact same thing across the board. This actually gives you multiple options. So if you don't like the Minotaur build in Ravnica, you may like one of the builds in Monstrous Lexicon. The second one is another kind of overlap, and that's going to be the Leshy, which actually kind of mirrors the Loxodon in Ravnica. It is an elephant type humanoid. Large lumbering elephants that walk upright. They are built similar in the function of the trunk and how it works, although the Monstrous Lexicon does again do things differently. They have a different build, they have different ability modifiers, they also have different racial abilities. And one thing they have is that the Leshy can actually grow a second trunk, or actually it might even be more than that, but I know it's at least 1 additional trunk the higher level you go. The second thing, which is another thing that I really like about the Leshy, is it's got a gemstone that's tied into your soul, and it gives you an additional ability. And there's 6 different gemstones that you can tie into, each giving you a different type of ability for the Leshy. So that's another kind of cool thing that they have. Now the 2 completely new playable races that do not overlap with anything in Ravnica is one's a tribute to small people, and that is the Gruagach, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And they're basically described as a distant cousin of a gnome, and they do kind of resemble, to me they kind of gave me the impression that they resemble a gnome, kind of crossed with maybe even a hobbit. Really, they're kind of built to be a perfect druid in my opinion. You can play them again as any class you want, but a druid would probably want to be one of the best ones, maybe even a ranger. So 2 really cool things that the Gruagach offer are, 1, they get to pick a spirit animal of, I think it's a challenge rating of 1/8, that they get at first level that can accompany them. So you can really think of a lot of creative uses for that as your character grows. The second thing is they actually at first level, regardless of if they choose a spellcaster class or not, they get to pick 1 cantrip from the druid cantrips that they get to use. So that's another very, very good feature. I think honestly, out of the 4 playable races, it's probably the best one in my opinion, the one that seems to have the most abilities especially at level 1. Now the 4th and final one is actually another pretty cool one that I like, and that I definitely already built a character out of just to try it out, and that's the Lupine. And basically they are a type of wolf lord humanoid race. Don't confuse them with a werewolf because they are not able to change into wolf form or human form. They are strictly a humanoid wolf. And I actually prefer it that way because if you made it similar to the werewolf, then you're just going to call it a werewolf. But they, as you can imagine, they have heightened senses, so they would probably be a pretty good ranger. That could tie into a lot of other classes with some creative things. They have a lot of good racial traits to them, ability modifiers, but I don't want to give too much of the book away. You know, if you get it, you can see all the four races have to offer. But that's the fourth choice, and I think that's a pretty good one. And I think it's something that I'm surprised hasn't come out with yet in with Wizards of the Coast. So I like that idea. I actually like all four ideas. Again, I build a character with all four races, and I really enjoy them. It's actually pretty cool. So that's the races in a nutshell. You have the Leshy, which is the elephant people. Gruagach, which is a little person, a kind of a distant cousin to the gnome. The Minotaur, which everybody knows what a Minotaur is. And then you have the Lupine, which is the Wolf Lord humanoid type race. I'm sorry. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to the next section, and that's going to be the creatures that the Monstrous Lexicon has to offer. Now I'm just going to go over, I'm not going to go over really the details of any of them at all, because that would take obviously too long. I'll just give you a quick overview of what the book offers. And that's really, they break it up into three different sections. The first being kind of falling in line with the tradition of Dungeons and Dragons. They have a creature based on all four playable races. So there are variations of the Minotaur, the Leshy, the Gruagach, and the Lupine as monsters. So that's one type that they have in there. The second one is they have variations of monsters that already exist in Dungeons and Dragons from Wizards of the Coast. Much like Monster Manual has the Minotaur, and then they have the Skeleton Minotaur, this one has variations of monsters that are already created, so it gives you a different flavor, a different type that you can build off of, especially like how, you know, they start with a gnoll and then they have a bunch of different variations of gnolls. So basically, instead of just throwing a bunch of gnolls at a party, you can throw gnolls with gnoll pack lords and gnoll flesh gnars. You have more variation. This book gives you more variations of different creatures that were already existing in Dungeons and Dragons. So I do really like how they did that. So now the third section is new monsters. And this book does offer a lot of new monsters. I think I forgot to say this, but it does have over 70 new creatures in this book, and the majority of them are new creatures. There are some from the other two variations that I already spoke about, but the majority of them are new creatures. And they do have some that are similar to existing creatures, but they have a lot of new ones that are completely aside from anything you've seen in Dungeons and Dragons. Very creative. They will throw your players off, so if you're a DM, this would be a good book to use because, you know, when you have those players who know the Monster Manual front to back, they are already starting to know all the monsters in Volo's Guide or Tome of Foes, or even some of the new ones in Ravnica. You can throw monsters at them in here that they will have no idea what they are. They won't know their strengths, won't know their weaknesses, won't have any clue how many hit points they have. So it kind of really throws that element of surprise at the player. So it is very good in that respect. With that said, that's basically it. I just wanted to go over and do a quick review of the 4 playable races and the creatures that the book has to offer. I think it's a really good resource book, especially if you are a DM. This is a great book because of the volume and the amount of monsters that it does have. Also, it has the 4 playable races that you can allow your player characters to use and try something a little bit different. So it really does have a lot to offer. I think Matt and Kelsey did a very good job writing this book. So hats off to the Pickled Dragon in general for a job well done. And a couple other quick things that I'll say is one thing that did surprise me, not a bad thing, but it did surprise me, is it's not in color. That's just a little quirk of mine. So it doesn't fall in line with all the other Dungeons & Dragons resource books where they're in color. This one is black and white, but with that said, the artwork is very good. I do love the artwork. I mean, I could probably just show you a quick picture of some of the monsters in here. Like this right here is a picture of one of the variations of a Minotaur as a creature. So as you can see, it does have very good artwork. It is built the exact same way as all the creature books are done in Dungeons & Dragons. Very well made. And the price point is actually right there with Ravnica, Tome of Foes, Volo's Guide. If anything, if you go out on Amazon, which is where I got it, you can probably get it for a couple dollars cheaper. You can even get it in paperback for less than $30. So it's the price point is basically right there with any other Dungeons and Dragons book, maybe even a few dollars cheaper if anything. So if you're interested in getting this book, I would definitely give it a thumbs up. I mean, it's a very good resource book, especially for DMs. If you don't DM, I will have to say, if you don't DM ever and don't plan to DM, it's probably not a book that you'd want. But then again, if you don't DM, you're not going to buy the Monster Manual. You're probably not going to buy Mordecai and Tome of Foes. You may not even buy Ravnica. Really, a lot of those resource books are built specifically for DMs. But I mostly DM. Probably 98% of my Dungeons and Dragons playing is as a DM. So with that said, I do recommend this to anybody out there who does DM. It's a very good book. But that's it for the video. So if you enjoyed it, smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos. And as always, thanks for watching.